Hey, Jeff.
Do we start?
Yeah, and then I'll wait out there and
Yep. Okay. Well, welcome. I feel like I'm where I used to be a little bit, but not so far away from you all. And for those that may be watching later on a recording, welcome to you as well. As you, well, no, you can't see because it's so tiny. This is a font that Wells Fargo does, so you have to use their size and everything. But my name is Jeff Pitzer. I'm a financial advisor. It's buried down in there. And as you know, lunch is provided by Kickapoo Tea Room, which is co-owned by my wife. I thought we could go ahead and just share what your businesses are, what you do. So we'll start. Lori.
You got it.
All right, I'm Lori Stickling with Covenant Plumbing.
Okay, cool.
Plumbing.
Yeah, awesome. I'm Maddie Poulter. I am our HR person at Four Seasons Health Club.
Oh, awesome.
Good. Well, I work with my father, Jim Pitzer, and another gentleman, Jim Waldorf, at Wells Fargo Advisory. Been there for a few years, but actually most of my career, I was kind of self-employed small business owner in Nashville, Tennessee. I was in music production. I still do that part-time, but that was my full-time business. And so I was very much involved with a lot of other small business owners and startup projects and things like that. So that's really, I understand small business owners. I understand a lot of things that they deal with. I appreciate them. And I'll also just share kind of a little bit of success and failure, if you want to call it, with me personally in my career. I did not really focus on a kind of retirement plan. I was doing my thing. I was focused on my business is my retirement plan. And so for many years, I was becoming more and more successful in the music industry and my income continued to go up and up and up. But what happened was, as you guys seem to be old enough to remember, that things went from CDs to online iTunes, and people were no longer buying albums, but buying singles. And then we were now at streaming, and the whole industry flipped very quickly with the advent of this technology. I was in the side of music production and making the music, making singles and albums. So when people went from paying $15 for a full album to $1.29 for a single, and now streaming is even less money. It's like money went drastically down really fast. And the people that the artists and record companies used to make money off of selling albums. And now that's not the case. Now that's why it's basically live concerts. That's why ticket prices are so dang expensive, because that's where they make their money as opposed to the other. So it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't good or talented. It was really that the whole model or how the industry worked because of technology changed drastically. And so I'm a bit passionate about wanting to encourage small business owners to consider trying to, even if it's just a personal thing, of just put some money in investing, because it can grow and make money while you're sleeping. You have to work to do it. But also I've found that there's a lot of people who don't know much about what's involved in a plan, and it just seems difficult, or it seems like I don't want to commit to having to pay extra on top of their salary, things like that. So I'm going to kind of go over all this overview. So let me okay, there we go. We'll use this. So this is basically the agenda of what we're going to go over today. Why offer employer-sponsored plans? We're going to look at what are known as employer contribution only plans, which are the two main ones are SEP IRAs and profit sharing, and then employer and employee contribution plans, which are simple IRAs and 401ks. And then lastly, we're going to look at the key roles that these plans need. Do you need an accountant? Do you need a financial advisor? Do you need other things like that? What do they do? How much do they cost? Those types of things. So those are the things we're gonna get into. So first, just kind of want to talk about a little bit about some statistics of why it's good to offer a retirement plan. So when I was kind of just looking up some articles online, one said that at least 62% of employees seriously consider the option of a retirement plan when deciding employment. There was a study by Accenture in 2018 that found that 68% of applicants say it is actually a decisive factor in accepting a job, and 62% say it's decisive in whether they stay in that job. And then PwC in 2019 did an employee financial wellness survey. They said that it is the top item that employees are looking for as far as financial wellness is their top list for things that they're looking for as far as benefits that an employer offers, and that was at 27%. Sure what the other items were, but it was number one. And then they also found that only 44% of employees think that employers care about their financial well-being or success. Now, that was all done in 2018 and 2019. Today's labor market, do you think that those numbers higher or lower today? Probably higher, as we are in a situation where labor has a lot more power and say than they did just a few years ago. So those are some reasons why I think it'd be good to consider offering a plan. Now, do you guys currently offer any kind of plan?
We do. It requires, you have to meet some different requirements. So you have to be employed with us for a year and you have to do 1,000 hours within that year.
Yeah. And how many, if you don't mind me asking, how many employees do you have?
We have, I think, about 15 that actually do it. So we have the thing where it's like, I think it would be a great idea, like, hey, here, you're eligible for this, go for it. And they're like, I don't want that coming on my paycheck. Like, I think maybe we're missing that educational piece, especially we have a lot of younger employees, a lot of college students that work for us. So I think just emphasizing that it is important because, like you said, that money grows while you're sleeping.
Yeah. Now, and how many employees do you have that would be eligible?
And we have 11 employees.
That's more than I think.
It could be, probably about the same.
Yeah.
We've been around 10, 11 for a couple of years, but we've grown a lot.
Yeah.
Since the last couple of
Yeah.
years. We currently use a simple, and we have 5 people on that plan.
Yeah.
But the simple, it's 2 years. And so we have a couple people that will be eligible later this year, but I think that's the biggest thing is the 2-year waiting period.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, I don't even like our 1 year wait, like, especially for the people that, we have a ton of part-time, but we do have, I think we're up to about 18, 20 that are full-time or, benefit eligible.
Yeah.
Like myself, I've only been there for 7 months, so like I can't participate in that. Like every day I'm like, hey, Tony, can I'm a salaried employee. Can we like just switch that up, the requirements? So.
Yeah, there's a lot of options, as you'll see. Some of them actually require you to do it from day one, and some of them a lot of it depends on just how you have the plan drawn up, if you have the flexibility. So like a simple doesn't have a lot of flexibility. Simple because it's very cookie cutter. This is how the plan works. But we'll get into all that. You guys kind of already passed some of this, but because you already have plans, but I usually hear I don't have time or don't have the bandwidth to deal with it. I'm not sure I can commit the money to contributing to a plan, or I'm not sure where to start. All right. So employer contribution plans. That's a fancy word for saying basically a profit sharing plan. There are 2 different types of those. You're going to see, I'm going to talk about 4 distinct plans. 2 are employer contribution and 2 allow employees to contribute. And each one of those has kind of a simple cookie cutter plan and a more complex plan. The SEP IRA is the more simple plan, and the profit sharing plan is the more complex. But let's look at the SEP IRA first. As the name suggests, it says simplified employee and pension. So this is the more simple one. And it works well if you have volatile profits or if you have low employee turnover, or high turnover within the first few years. So that's one of those plans that you don't necessarily have to pay in until after they've been there for a little bit. So if you have a lot of people turning in and out and you're not wanting to give money away to employees that are going to be gone at 6 months or a year, then this might be. It is a low cost plan and it's easy to administer. It works well if you just have a few or no part-time individuals. And it's a great stopgap plan. Because you can put it in if you're like, I'm not sure what I want, but I know I want to get some money to get something started and put some money into employees' accounts. You can set it up for a year and then you can switch it to something else later. Do that. Some things to consider. You have to contribute to part-time employees. Only employers can contribute. Again, this is an employer-only contribution plan. So employees cannot contribute out of their paycheck. So and contributions are 100% vested. So if you are, and does everybody understand what that means by saying something is 100% vested? Cool. But employees are excluded if they're not employed during any part of 3 of the previous 5 years. So this is where they were talking about the volatility of employees. So it's a little weird the way they write it, but any part of 3 of the previous 5 years, or they receive less than 715 total annual compensation. So again, you don't have to remember all these specific details. Hey, how are you doing? But if you are going, I think I want to get something that leans more in this direction, that direction, a financial advisor or someone that's familiar with these plans can help go through all these details again and get it. My name is Jeff. Good to see you. What is your name?
Teresa Fitzpatrick. I'm sorry
Oh,
for
it's totally fine, Teresa. So who are you with, Teresa?
Gateway Foundation.
What do you guys do?
They're a non-for-profit, but we also have a personal business. So I'm just kind of like interested in finding out how, what we're missing.
Yeah.
We need to know.
Sure. Well, I'm with Wells Fargo Advisors. I want to let you know that there is some free lunch that's provided from Kickapoo Tea Room and Boutique that's right through that door. So if you want to grab, there's a couple different types of sandwiches. There's a wrap, let's say BLT wrap, and then there's a club sandwich. Then there's also some delicious pumpkin spice cake. If you're hungry either now or afterwards, feel free to grab some.
Thank you.
We're just kind of diving into what are called employer sponsored plans. So they're not employer sponsored, but employer contribution plans. So these are plans that employees cannot contribute in. So it's not like a typical 401k where they take part of their salary and put it into the retirement account. This is basically like a profit sharing plan. So only employers can contribute into the employees' plans. And the first one, it's the easy simplified one is called the SEP or Simplified Employee Pension IRA. Where were we? So these are things to keep in mind. Employers only contribute to the plan, as I mentioned. Confused on why this says this, so I apologize if I screwed up on this. It says you must be willing to contribute to a part-time employee's plan, but it says does not include a part-time employee. So I don't know.
It does include.
Oh, it does. Okay, sorry.
Right.
Trying to read at an angle. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so that explains that. So okay. See, so it does include part-time employees unless they have that weird thing where they haven't been working for less than 3 to 5 years. So anyway, and contributions are 100% vested right away. So let's look at how it works here. The contributions are optional, so it is a true profit sharing. So if you don't feel like you have profit that year, you do not have to contribute. And if you do have profit, you get to, it's not like you have to do a certain percentage or a certain amount. You can just kind of look at your books and go, hey, I've got X amount of dollars that I'd like to get off my books, contribute to everybody else. That way it takes off my profit, top line and, is a tax write-off and we can pass it on to there. But the way SEPs work is you have to give an equal percentage amount of every employee's salary. So to give you an example, if you have an employee that's making $100,000 and you want to do a 10% of their salary, they get $10,000. And then the other employee who's maybe making 40,000, they get 4,000. So that's how that works. And the limit is, it's the lesser of 25% of their salary or $69,000. So you cannot go over that. So if you have employees that only, the top employees only making $50,000, they're going to be able to contribute up to 25%, which isn't anywhere close to 69,000. Contributions again are optional or discretionary. They can vary from year to year, and you don't have to do any contributions in a year if you don't want to. But this is key, or you'll get in trouble with the government. You have to use the same formula or the same percentage for every employee. The deadline for establishing it is your tax filing deadline, establish and fund it. So if you still wanted to set something up for 2023, you still could do that this year if you're not filing till April 15th. And then basically every employee sets up their own IRA. They open up their own IRA, so they are in charge of their investments. They want to put 100% of their money into Bitcoin. They could do that. They could, they can do whatever they want with it. Any questions on that one? All right, so this is kind of a slide, an example of what it would look like if you were to do 25% contribution. So Sam is the owner, so he gets 25. Beth is making 50, so she gets 12.5. John is only making 20. He gets 5,000. Ollie's part-time, so she gets 1375. This is the total. And so the owner gets 56.3% of the total amount. It's leveled out to everybody. Makes sense? Okay. Yeah.
Shows up there.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm going off of some notes, and my notes just like, it's my notes now. So I think I'm just gonna go off the slides from here on out.
darn.
What happened? Anyway, okay, so profit sharing plan, this has some more options to it. So it's a little bit more flexible, but it's also more complex. Again, it is voluntary or discretionary. So it can be good if you've got volatile profits. Because one year you could have a good year and you want to pass on some profits to another year, you don't have to. It's a lean year. It can be good if employee turnover is moderate to high. If you don't want to contribute to employees who have only been there for a year or two. Now, in your case, if you want to, this would be different. And you can exclude part-time employees to do that. So things to consider or to keep in mind, do you have more accounting requirements and more costs because of involving an accountant or an accounting type agency? They're usually referred to as a TPA or third-party administrator. We're going to get into that a little bit more later. Only employers, again, can contribute to the plan. So, and you can impose vesting requirements. So if you've got an employee who gets some money, but your vesting requirement is that they have to have worked there for 2 years and they leave in a year, then any money you put in, they don't necessarily get to keep any or all of that. So then that depends on the vesting rules that you put into place. You could say you get 50% in the first year and 100% if you've been there for 2 years. So it kind of encourages employees to stick around. But again, that is something that you can, I think, customize in the plan. And then again, they can be completely excluded from receiving anything if they've been there for less than a year, or if they're not making much money, if they're basically less than 1,000 hours per year. Again, this one does not include part-time employees. The SEP does, so that's a difference. The IRS Form 55 series form, 5,500, that is a form that you have to do for any kind of profit sharing or 401k plan. And so you do usually need an accountant or third-party administrator to deal with that. So, and that's what that is. The third-party administrator basically set up and administer the plan. So if you're wanting to set a specific vesting requirement or things like that, some of these options, they're the ones that you'll sit down with and you say, this is what I want to do. And then they will write up and create the plan. Basically like a legal document of sorts. And then I've never dealt with this before, but it does say that sometimes a company could be required to have a fidelity or surety bond for 10% of the fair market value of the plan assets. My guess is that that might be if once you get a certain amount, they want to make sure that there's some sort of insurance or guarantee that a bunch of people wanted to take their money and the company dissolves or they walk out or whatever, that is there. And then this is a little different. In the SEP, the employee is completely in charge of their management of their assets. Like I said, he or she could put all their money in cryptocurrency if they wanted to, or Apple or whatever. This, you can set it up to where the employee or the employer manages the assets in the plan. Right, now, the way you can profit share, the SEP was just a percentage of the salary. It always had to be an equal percentage for all employees. You have 4 different ways that you can profit share in a true profit sharing plan. You have a flat dollar amount. So if you want to give everybody $500 across the board, so it's like a bonus, as opposed to, doesn't matter what their salary is, if they're part-time or full-time. Well, actually, part-time don't count, but if it's wherever their salary is, you can just give a flat amount to everybody. Or you can do a pro rata approach, and that's where you do a percentage of their annual salary. The other one you can do that I really like. So if you want to write something down, if you're a small business, new comparability is one of my favorite plans. And that's where profits are skewed to favor older, higher compensated employees. So a lot of small businesses might have an owner or two, and then maybe they have 1 or 2 employees that have been with them from the beginning or are really key employees, and they might make a little bit more money. Depending on how the age and some other rules, and this is where the third-party administrator would analyze things to see, you can get paid up to 200% bigger percentage than the younger, newer employees. So instead of doing like a 10% across the board, one employee the owner could get 10%, and then a younger, newer employee would only get 3%, 4% of their salary. That makes sense. And then last is age weighted, and that's kind of similar, except for it's truly just on age that the contributions are higher for older employees, I should say. Any questions on any of that? We'll come back to at least the new comparability in a little bit. Okay, so employer contributions are optional, like the SEP. They're controlled or managed by the employee or the employer, depending on how you set it up. Your limit is up to 25% of if you're doing your percentage. Well, actually, whatever you're contributing cannot be more than 25% of their salary or over $69,000. You can do a percentage, you can do a flat amount. It can vary. You have to do contributions, but you have to use the same formula. However you're doing it, it has to be equal across the board for all employees. And the deadline is also your tax filing deadline. Questions on that? So here's another example. So this gives you kind of a breakdown of what a traditional profit share versus a new comparability or an age weighted. Obviously, the flat dollar amount, that's an easy thing if you're giving everybody the same amount. But for here, let's say you're gonna do 25%. So this is the kind of the 25% breakdown of every employee. Because this person's part-time doesn't work for profit sharing, it only works for SEP IRA, there's zero. So you end up giving out 42,500 and you can see the breakdown of it. This is 11% of the total, 29% of the total, and 58% of the total. But if you do the new comparability where that favors your owners and your longtime employees, you can see that the owner ends up getting 89% of the total 42,500 that's paid out. And then Brad, this person only gets 7.4, and Joelle gets 3%. Because they got 6. So anyway, so that you can see how that breaks out. And then this is kind of similar, but it's based on their age. So the owner still's older, so he gets 88.5%, not quite as much as the new comparability. But it truly is just based on their age. It doesn't have anything to do with. Oh. All right, so employee contribution plans. These are plans where both the employee and the employer can contribute. And again, we have a simple and a complex one. The simple one is the simple IRA. That's what you're familiar with, Lori. And you have 401k. A lot of different options for 401k. We'll get into all of that. All right, so the simple, this is for someone who wants very minimal fiduciary exposure, minimal responsibility. It's kind of a cookie cutter approach. So it's very simple. It's basically a one-page document you have to file with the IRS. You don't have to have a third-party administrator. So the costs are much lower. And it's a plan that can encourage employees to save for their retirement through payroll deductions. And that's part of the option that you're running into, or the issue you're running into, is you've got younger employees who don't want to take anything out of their paycheck. One of the rules with the simple is you cannot have more than 100 employees. It's really designed for small businesses, small to medium sized businesses. And the other rule is you have to make more than $5,000 or you can't contribute to the plan. Okay, other things to consider, you cannot exclude part-time employees. So this is just like your SEP IRA, have to include part-time employees as long as they earn more than $5,000 a year. And annual employer contributions are mandatory. So you have to contribute whether you had a good year or a bad year. And then obviously you've got to notify any employee that is eligible. You always have to notify them every year that they have the option to contribute if they want to. And the max that any employee can put into their account is 16,000. So most companies don't have to deal with that, but if you have, office of doctors or something like that are making bigger salaries, they may want to be able to put away more than 16,000 of their salary. This is going to limit them. And contributions are immediately 100% invested. So you get an employee who works for you for a year and leaves, they get to take any money that they put in with them, as well as if you contributed any money to. The other thing that's unique about this is the deadline to establish a simple is October 1st. For whatever reason, it doesn't seem to matter when you file your taxes. October 1st of every year, you have to establish it. All right. So again, like the SEP IRA, each employee opens up their own IRA. They can choose whether or not to contribute or not, and usually it's a percentage of the salary. So they have two options. They can do a dollar for dollar matching up to 3%. This is the employers, not the employee, the employer's options. They have two options. They can do a dollar for dollar matching contribution up to 3% of an employer. So if an employee is putting in 4% of their salary, you only have to put in up to 3%. If they're only doing 2%, you only have to do 2%. But you can't go below 1%. So even if they are doing 0.5%, you have to do 1%. And then if don't choose that, then there's a non-matching contribution, which means you're putting 2% of compensation into every eligible employee, whether they're contributing or not. Those are your two options. But like I said, simple is kind of cookie cutter. Have a lot of options. Now this is new. Beginning this year, Simples may make an optional additional contribution. As long as it is uniform and does not exceed either the lesser of 10% of their compensation or $5,000. So basically what I'm understanding this is kind of like an additional profit share option on top of the matching. You have extra profits or you want to kind of give an extra bonus, you can give a little extra.
So does that mean uniform does not mean that it has to be the same amount for everyone, but it could be 10%? I mean, it has to be the same percentage if you chose to go with percentage for every employee.
I'm not 100% certain
Okay.
if it's only a percentage or
Mhm.
you could do the flat amount, like I want to give everybody $1,000.
Mhm.
But whatever you choose for one employee, it has to be the same rules across the board. So to me, that's what I think uniform means.
Okay.
So I haven't dived deep into the specifics of it, but I think it just needs to be consistent.
Mhm.
One employee to the next. All right, and then employees choose from a buffet of investments like a 401k. Typically how it works. So if you've ever had a 401k before, has anybody been to a big corporation where they had their own 401k and stuff? Okay, you all have. So usually there's a list of here's your large cap growth fund and here's your, small cap fund and here's your bond fund and all that sort of thing. That's basically, so you can't go out and say, I just want to buy Apple stock or I just want to buy Bitcoin. You have to do with what they offer. And again, the deadline is October 1st to establish a plan. And so here's a quick little view of what you can see if somebody's doing a 3% match versus the 2% non-elective match. So we got Scott as the owner. Obviously, he's going to get some money, but really the main difference is if you have a part-time employee or someone who's not as much. So here, this person, they're not contributing, so they don't get a match. This one, even though they're not contributing, you have to contribute 2%. So that's kind of the distinction between those, if that makes sense. Questions? Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm just being ignorant here.
no.
Can you please break it down? What does it mean with the deferral? What's the
The
deferral?
deferral, yeah, these are not dumb questions. They have a lot of these. So these words that if you're not in this world, you're not quite sure. Deferral means that you as an employee, let's say you're an employee working for a company. You can choose to contribute or really the term is defer for an employee and contribute for an owner. Or the company makes contributions, the employee makes their contributions or deferrals, but basically they're taking part of their salary and putting it into their retirement account. So they're deferring their salary to get it later. That's where the word defer, that's why it's called deferral. So each employee, Scott he's making 100,000, but he's choosing to take out of his paycheck $13,000. So his take-home pay is only 87 now because 13,000 is going into his retirement account. Does that help?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then the employer has to match up to 3%. 3% of 100,000 is 3,000. So his total amount going into his account that year is 16,000. So that's why if you've ever worked for a company, it's always recommended that whatever the company is going to match, at least put in that amount because you're going to get free money, free extras, basically on top of that. So, but in this situation, it's not as good for him because you're not matching, you're automatically just putting in 2% in everybody's account. So 2% of his salary is 2,000. He didn't get as much, but for someone like Josh, who's not contributing at all, actually he gets $300-400 without having to take anything out of his paycheck. So, and this is the kind of thing where if you've got a lot of employees who don't want to take money out, if you feel comfortable adding to it, and that's adding to your cost of labor, but if you're comfortable doing that, you could create something like that. Any other questions? I like questions, so please ask. Okay, so, that's the options for simple. 401k gives you a lot more flexibility. And you have, two main types of 401ks. There's the traditional and there's a safe harbor. And this is a plan for employees who want to share the responsibility of providing employees retirement savings. So just like the simple, they're contributing, but you're contributing as well as the employer. And the employer contributions can be matching or can be profit share. So I'm going to show you how you can have a plan where you can allow the employees to defer their own salary into their retirement accounts, but you don't have to match. You can only choose to profit share if you want to, that if you have a good year. So lots of flexibility on also who's eligible, who's not, and their vesting requirements. When that money is 100% theirs. Now, anything they defer is usually 100% theirs. But any money that the employer puts in to match or profit share, that can be pulled back if they don't meet the vesting requirements. That makes sense? Okay. All right. So these are some of the things. Again, you're gonna, just like the profit share, you're gonna need to have this IRS form 5500 series form filed annually. And again, this is just basically something that your third-party administrator deals with. So obviously it's your business, so you're required to have it filed, but usually you're not the one filling it out. It's usually some sort of accountant or accounting firm or something like that. Again, I've never come across this bond situation, but that is a rule in there. So it may be based on the plan assets on how big it is. You can choose when you're matching if you want to do a dollar for dollar. So, you know, that's the percentage. So if they're putting in 3%, let's say it's 100,000, so that's $3,000, then you're matching 3%. So that's $3,000 more dollars. It's dollar for dollar match. But you can also do a partial where you can say, you know what, we're going to do 50% of what you put in. So if you put in $3,000, we're going to match 0.5% of that, which is, or instead of matching exactly, it'll be 1,500. Or you can do a non-matching option. That's more the profit share plan. All right, things to keep in mind. You can impose vesting and eligibility requirements. You can exclude employees with less than a year of service from participating. And you can require contributions to only be 100% vested after 2 years if you want. So it sounds like yours is a 1 year.
For vesting?
Or not, sorry, no, it was for,
Oh, yeah, we need, yeah,
Participate.
1 year of service and 1,000 hours.
yeah. So now I believe you can rewrite the plan to change that if you ever wanted to. And that's what a third-party administrator would do for you. You can choose a traditional or safe harbor plan. Traditional contributions are discretionary. So that's optional. You have to contribute. You can just let the employees put their money in and you don't have to do any matching or anything like that. But with a safe harbor plan, contributions are required. And they can be matching or non-matching. And you have the ability to make additional discretionary contributions within certain plans. So basically what this means is you have to do some sort of matching or contribution into it, but then you could also do an additional profit share on top of that. I'm trying to use terms that business owners think of versus accountants think of. And the contribution limit is much higher. So we looked at 16,000 for the simple 23,000 here. And the deadline to set up or fund it is your tax. So traditional, the matching cannot discriminate in favor of business owners. So we looked at how that worked in a profit share. It has to be the same across the board between highly compensated or business owners and lower level employees. But the contributions can be discretionary, can be matching, non-matching, or a combination thereof. So you can do a flat, I want to give everybody $1,000 and we're going to match. You can mix and match how you want to do it. So again, dollar for dollar is kind of a certain percentage of employees salary. You can do a partial match, which is a fraction or a percentage of the employee's contribution. And then you can not match, which is a profit sharing option. Any questions? I know I'm throwing a lot of terms out. Good, okay. Okay, safe harbor. And I don't remember why it's some sort of IRS tax rule. They call it the safe harbor, but basically that's where you can start to favor certain employees over others. Highly compensated employees can maximize, they can put in more into their account than what a lower level employee could do. But because of that, that is why they require that employees have to put in some sort of contribution. If we're gonna let you be kind of favor the big cats of the company, you've got to at least give something to the lower level employees. And then it also requires immediate vesting. So anything that you put in, it's theirs. And then you got basically 4 different matching options. Again, just realize the main point of this is that there's a lot of different options. You don't have to remember them all, but you can do basic matching where the employer matches 100% up to 3%. And then they do a 50%. That's that partial match up to 5%. So if they're doing 5%, then you're really putting in 4% salary on top of that. Or you can do enhanced matching, which is 100% up to 4%. So kind of similar, but not exactly. Or you can do a qualified automatic contribution arrangement. Fancy word, but basically means that you only match 100% on the first percent, and then you do 50% from anywhere from 1 to 6. So if they were to do all 6%, that means you're really matching 3.5% of their salary. And if you do that, then the vesting can be subject to a 2-year vesting schedule, to where the money that you put in as an employer is not theirs unless they've been there for 2 years. And then the last one is this QDIA, and that's where 3% of employer contribution is put in regardless of if the employee contributes or not. So whether you could have employees like you have that don't decide to contribute, and you still have to put in 3%. And then every year that they work for you, that rate increases to at least 6%. So it's kind of an incentive for them to stay and work longer. So a little different versions, and they're there to kind of give different incentives, help you out. Now here's the new comparability plan. And this is the one that I really like for small businesses, particularly ones that might have a lot of turnover of the lower level employees. It really kind of helps benefit the owners or the higher paid employers, or people that are employees, people who have been there for a long time. And so it basically kind of combines that new comparability profit sharing that we looked at earlier with the ability for employees to contribute to their own retirement in a traditional 401k. And so you can kind of target certain employees to receive a larger percentage. So to give you an example, a new comparability plan, if the rules work out right with the age and other things, you could have an employee that's making $100,000, maybe it's the owner, and they want to get 10% profit share. So they get $10,000 in their account. Then you have another employee who's making $40,000, but instead of them automatically getting 10%, since they're a new younger employee, they only get 3% of their salary. So that's $1,200. So they get $1,200 into their retirement account. The owner gets $10,000. So you can see how it really favors the owner in that. So if you're worried about paying people and then they're leaving in a year or two, like, why reward them? I want to reward the people that have been around for a while. This can be a really good option. And again, this is something you can change. It's completely discretionary. So you can choose to increase or decrease or not contribute at all. In this type of plan, you can make it a matching plan if you want to say we're going to match 2% of their salary and then have the option to do profit sharing, but you don't have to. So if you're a business who's concerned about can I commit to having to match or having to contribute every single year, that stresses me out. You could just let them contribute their money, deferral, as we talked about, of their money into an account that's growing tax-free until retirement. But then when you have a good year, you can profit share and give a percentage, and you can still kind of benefit the people that have been with the company the most. Make sense? Okay, so here's some examples again. So this is your traditional 401k, where they are deferring. This is what they are choosing to defer, and so then that just shows you what they put in. And then you have to match. So it shows you're doing your match is 3%, it looks like. So they put in 6,500, you're putting in another 3%, 3,000, so on and so forth. So you kind of go through and you can see, since they didn't contribute, there's no match. Make sense? Okay, this is the safe harbor where you can kind of benefit the higher employees more. And so you can see this person got 4,000, 4%. And so you can kind of play with the numbers a little bit to kind of give someone bigger percentage than other. And then this is have to go back and remember who ACA is, but that had different specific rules as well. But I won't bother all in time. Okay, main takeaway, 401k gives you a lot of flexibility. It also has the most moving pieces and the most expense. So now I want to kind of get into some of the roles. I think this is important for people to understand. The four main roles are plan sponsor or administrator, third-party administrator, or the TPA is what they're usually referred to, record keeper, and the financial advisor. The plan sponsor is usually the employer or the person or persons responsible for instituting and overseeing the plan and working with the other key roles to make sure it happens. So most of the time, that's going to be the employer themselves, some sort of HR person, that sort of thing. We will decide what type of plan to institute, be responsible for helping manage it and working with the others. The third-party administrator is usually some sort of accounting firm or accounting agency that specializes in qualified plan administration. When you see the word qualified, that means basically retirement. A qualified plan is a plan that qualifies to be tax deferred at retirement age. They set up and customize the initial plan with the employer, and then they're responsible for kind of keeping the plan in compliance. So they prepare and amend any plan documents. They do the annual filings to the IRS, and they will do just non-discrimination testing to make sure you're not giving too much to the owner and not enough to the local employer, that you're following, you're being equal with all the employees, however you set it up. And they will usually charge a per hour or a flat fee for the service. And you have the record keeper. The record keeper is basically the bookkeeper of the retirement plan. Now, I'll kind of go over what they do, but basically, if you want to think about the TPA as being your accounting agency, the record keeper is your mutual fund company. It's where the assets are going and the options that they have for investing. So they keep records of who's in the plan, what investments they own, the inflows and outflows of the money. They're responsible for giving account statements like an investment statement or a bank statement for all the participants, as well as for you, the plan sponsor. And then, like I said, they're the custodian of plan assets like a mutual fund company. They are passive players, so they're not giving advice. They're not ensuring that what you put in is compliant. That's the TPA's job. And they may charge a fee for the plan or percentage of the assets in the plan and or number of employees enrolled. And then the mutual funds themselves have a management fee or an expense ratio. And at the end, I'm going to kind of give you an example of all of this, of how I put together a plan and what all the fees were for everybody and how everybody got paid. Third-party administrator. We didn't go over this, did we? We did. That's what I thought. I must have gone the wrong way. No record keeper. Financial advisor. There we go. Last piece. Financial advisor. They usually work with some sort of investment firm, and they kind of are like the quarterback. They're kind of like the central hub of all of this. They're usually the ones that are helping, or lack of a better term, sell the plan to a business person or a business owner. So they will help by helping select a new record keeper or TPA, or they'll reevaluate existing ones if you're not sure that you're happy or you're being served well. They will consult on the plan design. So they will, with the TPA, help you decide what's best for you and your employees. They provide investment recommendations, they monitor things, and they will also optimize the fund lineup at the plan level. So what that means is, for me, like when I've set up plans for small businesses, I'm working with the record keeper, a mutual fund company, and they will give me a long list of here's all the mutual funds that we could offer. And I will go through and I will choose the ones. So that way you're not looking through 100. I whittle it down to about 20. So I think these are ones that cover the basic areas of investing that people would want to have. So again, they're kind of the central contact point. I have a fiduciary role, and I'm available to educate participants on their specific investments or any kind of financial planning decisions that they have, and typically charge a fee on the assets in the plan. He is usually fine in the industry, it's 1%. All right, so things to consider with these roles. One of the things I've found in my experience is that there are services that bundle these features together. There are payroll companies that will also be offered to be the TPA service. Or there are record companies that are record keeper companies that will also either offer a third-party administrator service, or they offer their financial advisor services. What I have found is that these companies usually good at one thing and not at another. And I have had at least one of the plans that I had was an existing plan that someone was using where they had a payroll company, but they were not happy with the third-party administrator side of things. And if you're not careful and they're not doing their job, something doesn't get filed right, or the rules don't get followed, it's not their fault, it's your fault, right? Just like if you hire an accountant, something goes wrong, you're still the owner of the company. And if you didn't file a form, you're still on the hook for not having filed that form with the IRS. So I'm not a fan of using bundled services. Also, record companies, if you're wanting to use them as their financial advisor as well, you're basically dealing with an 800 number service, and you're probably not going to be talking to the same person every time you call. So they're just going to kind of have a cookie cutter approach to kind of go, yeah, you should have some large cap and you should have this and whatever. And they just, it's not very personal, and it's probably not be as good. So I recommend, especially the more complex the plan is, that you get someone who's an expert in this field. Does that make sense? So let me kind of give you some actual specific numbers of things to kind of create a plan. Third-party administrator, I have found, usually charge at least $1,000, sometimes up to close to $2,000 to create a plan and then to administer that plan. So that's kind of the outlay you're looking at. So I would kind of gauge 1,500 is a good number. It's usually been around 1,200 to 1,600 is what I've found that the third-party administrator is charging per year to maintain that plan. The record keeper depends on the mutual fund company. One that I use a lot is American Funds, and I use them because I think they're economical for small businesses. They do usually a flat annual fee of $750 a year. And then there's a $20 fee per employee, per participant in the plan. So you think about it this way, if you've got $750, then you got 10 employees, it's another $200. So you got $950 that you will pay annually through the record keeper for that plan. And then if you've got $1,200 in your TPA, you're looking at $2,150 a year is what you'd probably pay Now, I had mentioned, the advisor gets charges 1% fee. And then there's possible management fees in the mutual funds that might be a 0.5% or something that they take out. So that comes out of the investments themselves. So now you could probably set it up if you wanted as the owner to pay the financial advisor fee out of your side, you could, but most plans, those things come out of the investment. So each employee's investment is probably being charged 1.5% annually. And to give you a perspective, if you were to buy a mutual fund C share, you're probably paying a 1.5% management fee personally. So it's not out of the realm of what you would pay if you were buying a normal mutual fund for that. You can also, if you really don't want to pay the record keeper fee, that $750 and then the $20 per person, you can have one or both of those fees wrapped up into the employees' accounts paying for that. So you could make them pay the $20 a year for their own account, and you could also split the $750 across the board with employees if you wanted to. Other mutual fund companies, instead of paying a flat fee, they'll do a percentage of the assets under management, which may not be a bad thing in the beginning, but the problem is that everybody continues to put money into those accounts. So those accounts are going to grow. And so you're paying a certain percentage now, it's going to get worse later. That makes sense. So that's basically kind of how people get paid and how it breaks down. Any questions on any of that or anything really? Is this helpful at all? Or is this all stuff that you guys already knew? Is there anything that's new or a benefit to you? Curiosity.
I've never really learned about profit sharing stuff, so
Okay.
that was interesting to just,
Okay.
have some baseline of what that would be like.
I feel like a lot of small business owners immediately think of matching. If I do a 401k, I have to put in a certain percentage of whatever they're getting paid, and so that just increases basically my labor costs. So I like for small businesses, the idea of maybe starting out with a profit share, then have the option to add a match later if you want to, but you're not required to do it. The biggest hurdle is that, if you want to have those options, you got to kind of go with a profit sharing plan or a 401k, which means you're going to be laying out maybe $500 a year. Now that's tax deductible, that's a business expense, but it's still an additional expense that you're adding per year. So where if you do a SEP, basically all you need is a financial advisor set up as simple or SEP, or an investment firm of some sort. Even call an 800 number somewhere and they could set that up for you. But to do the other, you need to have someone create the plan, the third-party administrator. The other thing I would say, just to keep in mind, I've also had a lot of employees that have moved their retirement. Once they retire, they move their accounts over to an IRA, which is an individualized retirement account where they can manage it, have control over it. They're not limited to just the mutual funds that they offer. They got a lot more flexibility. But most of the time, one of the reasons why they do it, they tell me, is because I know there's a financial advisor for this 401k plan or 403b plan. I've never heard from them. When I call, they never call me back. So basically what happens a lot is you get these financial advisors who will go into a business, they'll sell a plan and it's set up for them. And then they move on and they go sell something else. And they are not actually giving any kind of investment advice, planning, things like that. What I personally like to do is I work with a company. I follow a certain strategy called relative strength investing model. And so I will rank all the mutual funds based on who is on the top of that strategy at that time. Every quarter, I'm emailing the owner or the plan sponsor and saying, these are the 4 funds that I would recommend that you would be invested in 25% each this time. And then they can pass that on to their employees. The employees can choose to do it or not. I'm trying to give them active advice based on what market conditions are. And then I'm also available whenever an employee has questions about, hey, here's my situation. I want to invest in trying to retire by this age, whatever, what should I do? I will actually either go and meet with them at the company or take phone calls. But whoever you work with, I would try to make sure it's a financial advisor that is going to ongoing advice and support. Well, should have some pumpkin spice cake because I don't want to have to eat it all by myself.
I'll take a piece to delight.
I'm just gonna add this.
Yeah, go for it. Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. But good to see you.
Tell your hubby hello for me. Forgot my business card.